Hi, welcome back for part three of our series on recruiting in this time. On this video, we're going to address some of the questions and potential impacts that recent NCAA decisions will have in the recruiting landscape over the coming years, as well as some of the potential impacts and cascading second-order effects that you'll see. First, let's start by saying that a lot of the questions and topics that we'll address today are still and constantly evolving, and they're in a state of flux, very far from settled at current moment. So ultimately, large parts of these questions are going to be addressed directly or indirectly by upcoming NCAA decisions over the next few months. In the meantime, we want to make sure that families have these questions on their radar so that they can start to move forward, navigating their recruiting with the potential impacts and changes in mind that they'll start to see over the coming months. With the cancellation of college baseball seasons, there have already been some decisions from the NCAA that will impact future recruiting classes. Namely, the most important one is the extension of another year of eligibility to current graduating seniors, so that the college class of 2020. From this decision stem other questions about roster size, scholarship availability, playing time, and many more that reach from next fall's incoming college recruiting class through quite possibly the next few years in college baseball. So to cover the changes briefly, so far the most impactful decision that has already been made, and quite frankly made very quickly, all things considered, by the NCAA was to extend another year of college eligibility for this year's seniors who had their seasons cut short across divisions 1, 2, and 3. While it remains to be seen how many of these current seniors will take advantage of or use this additional year of eligibility, it will have impacts on upcoming recruiting classes and also some of the recruiting tactics and strategies that college coaches are able to use. More on this second point later on as well. The other change that has already been outlined and executed by the NCAA is the implementation of an additional recruiting dead period effective from last week through April 15th. We talked about this new dead period and what it means tactically and how prospective student athletes can continue to move their recruiting process forward on the last two parts of this series. So if you have specific questions about this and how to move forward during a dead period, please feel free to take a look at and review those other two videos or blog posts. In addition to those tactical notes on what student athletes can do right now to keep moving forward, this new dead period will also impact how college coaches go about their recruiting over the next few months and possibly through the summer and for the years to come as well. While coaches aren't allowed right now to conduct any face-to-face recruiting, either on campus or off campus, they are able to communicate via email and phone with prospective student athletes. And without the time pressures of being in season right now, they actually have the availability to pursue their digital recruiting efforts pretty aggressively, and more so than they would typically during March and April when they would usually be in season. In fact, many college coaches are actually taking to social media and email to make sure that prospective student athletes and recruits know that they can still be in effective contact digitally with them during this time. So as we talked about in part two, make sure that you are using this time to be in touch with college coaches, build your list, do some email outreach, do some phone outreach, etc. Also, this means that for at least the next month or so until the current April 15th deadline, coaches are going to be shifting a lot of recruiting efforts and eyeballs towards video. Video has never been more important in recruiting than it is right now, both for student athletes and for coaches. We talked a little bit in detail about how to make and update your video on part two, so I advise you take a look at that. In the blog post, there's an outline for what your video can include, so take a look there. But this at least month-long shift to video could very well prove to be sticky and effective for coaches, and it may become a more permanent trend in recruiting as well. Even up until now, coaches have used video pretty heavily in their recruiting efforts to see as many potential recruits as possible. Now with coaches restricted to campus, it's even more important and worth doubling down on video for prospective student athletes, since it will be getting the eyeballs over the coming months that being in person, you're not allowed to right now. There are also, with the NCAA decisions and more, there's a lot of questions that these raise as well. So those two already made changes, the eligibility decision and the current dead period, are those have already been made by the NCAA, but there are more decisions coming in the next few months that could further impact recruiting for this summer and potentially the next few years. Number one that we're going to talk about is roster size. So Division I baseball is limited to a maximum roster of 35 players, and while Division III schools don't have the same hard cap, virtually every coaching staff does limit their roster size, and most tend to hover around the mid-30s. If you have questions about a school in particular, I advise you take a look at the school's rosters that you are looking at, your target schools, to verify. And note that results may vary if a Division III program is running some sort of developmental or JV squad, or might be bigger for a travel and then a travel roster, and then some kids stay at home when they play conference series, etc. So take a look at individual rosters if you have specific questions. With current seniors able to stay for another year and with another year of eligibility at schools that have some kind of master programs that they can register for, without a waiver or adjustment of roster limits, in 2020, there is the potential for some rosters to be larger than they're able to be, which may necessitate cuts or red shirts. Seniors might stick around. Incoming recruiting classes, so the high school class of 2020 has already been committed and admitted at these schools. So there's some balance that could shake out if there isn't a change from the top down at the NCAA level, allowing a waiver or some sort of change in the roster size for this coming year. The second potential impact is scholarships and scholarship availability. Current NCAA Division I rules allow for 11.7 scholarships at fully funded baseball programs, which can be divided up among a maximum of 27 players who are on scholarship on those rosters. It's also mandated that while these 11.7 scholarships can be divvied up and they don't need to be a full ride for each student athlete receiving a scholarship, each player who is on scholarship on those rosters must receive a minimum of 25% scholarship, so towards the full payment for the school. The question remains in this case if the 11.7 scholarships at each program stands to have a 1 or 2 year increase, or if it stays the same, since some of those potentially returning seniors will occupy pieces of that scholarship allowance. Also, will the cap of 27 players allowed to be on scholarship at each program remain the same, increase? And then finally, NCAA decisions will also dictate if the 25% minimum stays in place as well. So all these different moving pieces could be potentially impacted and could impact 2020 and 2021, 2022 scholarship availability as well. All of these would be decisions made from the NCAA and ones that I think they'll make probably in the coming weeks or months. But looking at some prevailing sources that I've been following in the space, it seems likely, though not guaranteed, that a 1 year waiver for the 27 players on scholarship cap and also the 11.7 total scholarships could come down from the NCAA. That's kind of where general consensus seems to point, although certainly nothing guaranteed until that decision is made by the NCAA. Of note, while the scholarship-specific decisions may only apply directly to Division I programs, they certainly could have trickle-down effects on Division III rosters. And then within Division III rosters and admissions offices, there also could be some parallel sets of decision-making regarding how many slots a coach or program has to give in upcoming years of recruiting and admission. And though these slots don't come with scholarship dollars, they are crucial to the Division III recruiting landscape. The other unique thing about these slots is that the decisions won't be mandated top-down from the NCAA, but are governed independently by each school's admissions and athletics offices. So there won't necessarily be the same uniformity or agreement in the changes to policies or practices. It could differ from school to school, from league to league, etc. So when in doubt about these questions, as these decisions come down from the NCAA or from leagues and schools, be in contact and be in effective communication with your target schools and the coaches there, so that you're able to kind of keep tabs on what the developments might mean for you as a potential recruit to that program. Now, let's talk about the impacts that some of these decisions and some of the questions might have on the recruiting landscape. These decisions will ultimately have an impact on teams, rosters, coaches, and recruits. And while the most immediate effects could be felt by the incoming recruiting class next fall, so the high school class of 2020, how long the exceptions or waivers last could also mean some changes or some potential ramifications for cascading further effects down the line. So is it a 1-year only waiver for 11.7 scholarships or for roster size, or is it something that continues over the next few years? That remains to be seen, and it could mean some later on knock-on effects that you'll see later. Namely, both scholarship decisions and roster size rulings could impact the size of future recruiting classes, availability for scholarships, and also competition for playing time once recruits arrive on campus, as well as some other areas of possible effect too. With an additional year of eligibility, seniors who are and were already planning on pursuing graduate degrees at either their current school, if they have master's programs, or other schools, may be able to use this additional year of baseball eligibility while they're getting their master's, their law degree, etc. This could mean an uptick in what are called graduate transfers at all levels of college baseball, even programs, especially at the Division III level, which would usually very, very seldomly see this type of graduate transfer. But now, even at these programs, there's the potential to see some, since many of these student athletes go on to graduate or master's programs, and now they can continue playing baseball for a year while they do. One interesting consideration here is the impact of these types of players and these player additions on the culture of the program. In talking with some of our friends, specifically at the high academic Division III level, even with this being a potentially viable option for the first time in their recruiting, there's still the necessary caution and thinking through of what the impact on the locker room and team culture could be with some volume or some influx of graduate transfers. So while they may be able to do this, there's certainly no guarantee that these schools are going to, because they might be wary of some of the potential culture impacts on their current players, as well as on their incoming class of recruits as well. So let's talk about lessons and takeaways that you can use in your recruiting process. With all these changes, questions, real and potential impacts, where does it leave the families of prospective student athletes? As we've thought through these impacts and discussed them with college coaches, families, student athletes, etc., I think that the main takeaways that we see really serve to underscore and double down on some pieces of the recruiting process that we've long thought were of central importance when you're going about this. One, holistic school fit is the single most important win in the recruiting process, and finding the right fit is more important now than it ever has been. As recent events have showed, nationwide, a college baseball season is not guaranteed, so it's crucial for student athletes to consider what their time in college and on campus looks like, both with and without baseball. Baseball careers will end, whether it's after high school, after college, or after some kind of illustrious pro career. It doesn't matter. Baseball careers will end. So the decision that you are making in your recruiting process has to be centered on holistic fit, and also on setting yourself up for your life after baseball by maximizing your academic opportunities through this process, leveraging baseball, leveraging athletics in the admissions process to maximize your academic outcome and your academic and holistic fit for your college experience. And then second, you need to be ready to arrive at college, ready to compete. Whether there's a larger roster or not, make no mistake about it, when you show up at a baseball program, you're going to be competing for playing time, and you're going to be trying to create a role for yourself from which you can help the team. So while potentially expanded rosters in the next few years may put a magnifying glass on this competition for playing time, it's not new. And being ready to compete, showing up ready to compete, is exactly what college coaches are looking for and looking for you to do when you arrive on campus. So keep that in mind as well. Thank you for sticking with us this week to learn more about how, current events and how the coronavirus stands to impact recruiting, and also how you as a prospective student athlete can set yourself up for success even during this time and this, seeming interruption in the process. Next week, stay tuned for some additional videos and blog posts. We'll focus a bit around some of our programming, some technology updates, etc. If you have specific questions about your recruiting process, how to navigate it, anything of the sort about these posts, etc., please feel free to contact us. You can always reach our team by email at showcase@headfirst.com, or by phone at 202-715-6654. And then alternatively, you can always pop onto our website at headfirsthonoroll.com/baseball and chat with us there from the live chat feature. Thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to talking in the future.